Eucalyptus is what I'm here to talk about today, and funnily enough in our fossil records there is eucalypt pollen, so they were native here once. They're not too far across the way anyway in Australia. So I'm not going to talk a great deal about bees, a little bit at the end. I'm mainly going to rip through, and I mean rip because I don't have a lot of time, why we're doing what we're doing, talking to you about wood, and then touch on the possible benefits of our project in the future. I'm going to mention the Marlborough Research Centre, which is the agency that employ me. It's a unique centre down in Blenheim, and it's actually the wine centre of excellence in New Zealand. So you all know we grow the best wines, despite what some of you Gisborne people might think. The risk of tomatoes coming my way, I can say that, because we've got all the research really substantially going on in Marlborough at the Research Centre. And the Research Centre really back what I'm doing, and you'll see why shortly. We're funded substantially by the Sustainable Farming Fund, MPI, so there's a really good, I think, synergy around what we're doing and the Trees for Bees project. And as anyone knows with these projects, you need some key people to help you drive it. I mentioned the trust. We have Proseed New Zealand down in Amberley. They're owned by Ngāi Tahu, who are the biggest tree seed company in Australasia, and really without them we couldn't go forward because all the seed that they get for us. Our Brains Trust is the School of Forestry at the University of Canterbury, a company I set up myself to help drive this Vineyard Timbers back in 2003, and then a group of supporters there that I won't list, but you'll see regional councils and obviously Farm Forestry are very strong in what we're doing. Now, why did we set up at the Marlborough Research Centre Trust? And it was driven by this problem. Simply, CCA treated pine posts in the vineyard, when we come through into a big harvest, they get smashed by these large harvesting machines. And you then end up with stockpiles of broken posts. And I'm talking about pretty big stockpiles, some of them. And they're a liability really for the sustainability of the wine industry. That slide says it all. Low strength of radiata, you get 3 to 5% breakage. It's a hazardous waste because it's chrome, copper, arsenics. That's what CCA is. So you've got to actually dispose of them into a proper sanitary landfill. There was big concern over the potential of the toxicity of that stuff, that there isn't an issue there. There was research done by the Research Centre on that, but it demonstrated that there wasn't a problem. But you do get a deposit of CCA under every single post, and it's there forever. And then obviously you get a broken post, you've got to replace it. It took us a while, but we cracked it, we felt, and we realised you could use naturally durable hardwoods. And the eucalypts were the ones that we picked out. There's other species people often talk to me about, but they are the species that we adopted. This is a post here, Eucalyptus persistuana, and you can see in a nutshell, or in that slide, everything is dealt with in terms of that issue and for the wine growers. So the Wine Research Centre, when I came along with this idea, they said, "Wow, can you sort this for us?" And I said, "I think so." So they said they'd back us. So that's why I'm the only forester that walks amongst all the wine people at the Research Centre. It's kind of funny at times, but they've got used to me there. But it's not a new idea. In Australia, all the vineyards there, and I've travelled through quite a few of the wine country estates and the like, and you often see still eucalypt being used for the strainer posts. These are classic old ones here. And I saw in Mildura where they'd ripped out the posts out of a vineyard, replaced it with treated pine. You can see over on the left here. And yet look how most of those posts, they went in the 1950s, part of the settlement of soldiers back in after the war. And they grew those sun-made raisins, you know, the little wee grapes that we all got in little red boxes to take to school. Those of us who are old enough to remember that. You'll be wondering what's durability about. That slide, the Aussies know more about their species than we do, and so it isn't. It's an Australian standard that everything's referenced to, and they've had, a lot of research. I won't detail that to determine what is the classification that you assign each species. There's 600 plus species. In fact, some people say there's 900 eucalypt species. The botanists are always arguing about that. So this type of classification really is important because every species is different. And if you don't know them all, but someone tells you it's a class 1 or a class 2, then you know you've got a durable one. So that was critical. Just what motivated me personally was the scale of this just in our region. And again, we got around 25,000 hectares of vineyards. There's about 600 posts per hectare, and that's conservative because they're increasing they're narrowing the distance between the vines and the rows. 15 million posts, 3%, you're looking at nearly 500,000 posts breakage. At 5, it's 750,000. So that, and I see the trucks coming over the hill from Gold Pine, and when the big rollout of new development in the last 12 months, you just see literally acres of stacked posts waiting to go into vineyards. So it's a big opportunity commercially, and it's important for our region. Then out of the blue, this chap here on the left, Ken Forrest, he's the general manager for Marlborough Lines, our network company. He rang me up saying, look, this wood that you're going to use in vineyard, we'd probably pay you twice the price if it was good enough for our cross arms. So we went to see him, had a chat, they joined our program. Essentially, internationally, these things here, and most of you won't even register that every single one of those in New Zealand is an imported piece of timber. We pay large sums of money for them, and yet we could be growing them here ourselves. Internationally, they're in short supply. So it's a pretty interesting position for New Zealand to contemplate. You go to the waterfronts around New Zealand, a lot of redevelopment in waterfronts, even in any part of the world, you'll see hardwood being used everywhere. You don't see treated pine much. It doesn't perform. And I'm sure if I went down to the waterfront here in Gisborne, I'd find hardwood being used. Some of it's really old from the early days, all brought in from Australia, but they're still having to use timber for some of these developments. And you can see the values of some of those timbers. Some of that might not mean a lot to people who don't understand timber and values. Those are very, very superior prices. Treated pine's about $900 a cube. Okay, so that helps you put that in perspective. This slide just says a lot about, and you people have lost your rail line. I don't know if you'll ever get it reopened. Certainly you'll need plenty of hardwood if you're going to do that. Kiwi Rail really is, for a nation that are meant to be first world, it seems to be a bit of a third world business. They've had some incredibly major problems in the last few years. One of them was these rotting sleepers, so very like the cross arms. They're in short supply internationally. They got a buyer out of Australia to source timber from somewhere in South America, I think Venezuela. Timber all came in, and they put 5% of it out into the lines. Within less than 5 years, it was rotting. Now, the engineer tells me normally they get at least 20 to 25 years out of a sleeper. So that immediate problem cost them $7 million. That's what got actually put into the newspaper. Our whole program, we could finish it with that sort of money. But in fact, they bought 100,000 sleepers, and they all rotted in the warehouse. You didn't hear about that. So he's looking for 30,000 sleepers at the moment and having to get them from Africa, Azobe timber. And yet look at this, in our main rail line through Blenheim, beautiful posts, been there for 70 years. I've been able to verify that those hardwood, untreated hardwood poles have been there supporting the railway line for 70 years. Domestic market, the key things at the top there, these are MAF figures, or Ministry of Primary Industries figures, was we still import $50 million worth of timber into our country. Seems ludicrous for a place that can grow trees as well as we do, and we pride ourselves on it, and I don't get that one. I could analyse all of this and tell you that most of it's hardwood. And then offshore, the markets are huge. Probably this is the most important one to understand. Rainforest supplies are decreasing. They're either getting closed up or they are just simply running out, and projections are huge in terms of the demand for high quality hardwood internationally. So we believe our species can go into these markets. We really see the whole of the North Island's very much in our sights, even though we're down here in Marlborough, in this area. You can see where most of our trials are concentrated, so all these little dots, these are all represent where we've got trials. We've definitely targeted this East Coast area and up into Gisborne, and we're now over into Horizons, and this year I'm actually getting into into the Waikato. So we think the potential is huge in the country, and our target is to see 100,000 hectares planted. We've got sites in all sorts of places. You can grow them in pine cutover. You don't have to plant them straight into new ground, this type of thing. That's southern. Those were all North Island sites. These are our South Island sites. Lots of benefits beyond growing the wood. We see potential for smaller scale processing. because it doesn't need chemical treatment when it comes off the saw. You can just rack it up and leave it. All the other benefits, look, the trees, nectar for bees and native birds, etc. I'm not going to linger on the species, just get your head around Argifloea, the Stuana, Tricarpa, Globoidea, Quadrangulata, Macarinca and Eucalyptus. They are going to be the species of the future. And our work program is aimed at trying to improve the wood properties primarily, okay? And we need quite a lot more funding to do that, and I've heard some people putting their hand out and saying they need funding. If anyone wants to help me with funding, talk to me. But eucalypts for bees in New Zealand. So some of these have high protein levels in the pollen with the genus, within the genus, and the flowering times of the species are varied throughout the year. The timing of flowering is influenced by many factors: site, age, health and genetics. However, most of the information is reported from Australia and is often contradicting and cannot be directly translated into New Zealand environments. And as an example, and I can't linger on this because the time's up, but if I run you along the Globoidea here, and I'll give you an example. So Somerville's saying the pollen content of Globoidea is 29.4, which doesn't mean a lot to me other than it's high, isn't it, Linda? 29.4%. Bolland, which is a very, very good reference, is giving flowering from April to June. And Brooker and Kleiner, also very good, April to June. These are Aussie references and the Australian treat. So in Aussie, this is what's going on with Globoidea. Dark, nothing on dark, but here Loke commented on flowering regularly, yields great quantities of pollen and nectar, good flavoured amber honey. However, Millen, has recorded it mainly flowering from July. In fact, I did a bit more of a study this summer, and with some provenance trials, it started flowering in July, and different provenances sequentially flowered, and they were still flowering in February, right through the season. So there's some huge work to be done there. And there are quite a lot of trials around, which is important to note, that we do have a lot of these species in trials, so some work is possible. But what's exciting about this slide to me as well is the comments on the honeys that are being made there. And sure, some of you might dish the Aussie honeys, but don't forget, Eucalyptus myrtaceae, they're in the same group as Manuka. How many of you use eucalypts for their pharmaceutical properties? I don't know whether they've been tested for any unique E factor, but potentially, and beekeepers locally have said this to me, they're more complex, longer living plants and could very well have factors that we haven't even tapped into. So while I'm here to talk about our species supporting what you guys are doing, and that there's actually a potential, if we plant 100,000 hectares of the right species, you'll actually have an entirely new honey crop that you could be also taking off. So I really want that message from today. What's neat about them, from my perspective, is that eucalypts are very pretty trees, I think, when they're flowering. That's Globoidea. That's one of our sequential flowers, Linda. Look at that. You see how it's got maturing capsules, and then right just here it's already got new flowers coming on, and here's some initials. And it's all going on. Some trees are just flowering continuously right through. The Sistuana, very high durability. These trees are up behind Blenheim on the Wither Hills. It doesn't really do it justice. This is an absolute barren bare landscape in February, and this was a buzz with bees. Absolutely just covered with bees. Really going off. They're 40-year-old trees. Macarinca, excellent late summer going into autumn flowering variety. Very early flower. We've got quite a good collection of those. And Quadrangulata, which we don't know much about, but looks like it could be winter flowering from my records. Eucalyptus, a species quite a lot known about in Australia, and that's a March flowering. Beautiful big blooms. They're probably one of the largest inflorescence you'll see on eucalypts. What's very exciting for us with this is that Globoidea, we have it in extensive breeding populations. By that I mean for the similar work that you've been doing with Manuka. We've 3 of them. One's in the Wairarapa in Namu and Cutover Pine Forest. This one's on Doug Avery's property at Lake Grassmere. Some of you will know Doug as being the guy who's pretty keen on lucerne, and that's an extremely dry site, one of the driest places in the country. And then down in southern Wairarapa we have this amazing planting going on here, where in some of the there's families that we've identified that are doing this stuff at age 18 months, are forming these flowering initials. They haven't opened yet, but we're pretty excited about the prospect of picking genotypes that will be early flowerers. And there's research to back that up. So I'm really here to say, and I talked to Rodney about this, I said, Linda and I, we've chatted, she's been and visited, had a look. The scale of what I think we need to do needs another project, built off this one and our project, a collaboration, and then we can do some very exciting work, because these are the key questions. What are the flowering times of our species in New Zealand, and do these change from north to south? And within that question is also the provenance variation, and we've heard about that with Manuka, and it's going to go on with our Ukes. Which durable species and genotypes offer high quality pollen and nectar? And I've already alluded, to me, the prospect isn't to just find something to support your bees, it may be an entirely new crop. And so the study needs to look at what are the unique factors that perhaps eucalypt honeys may have. And then the big one, which Linda and I have both talked about, and I think we can crack it with some LiDAR work and various things, is how many of these species, or trees really, are needed in a woodlot and shelter belt to support the bees on my property. And I probably should have added all year round, because the concept is that you could plant a block of trees, block of eucalypts, that will sequentially flower and entirely support your bees on that property. And then at the end of the rotation, in fact you don't have to cut them all down, you can thin them progressively for timber, etc. There's any number of ways you can manage it. Thank you very much. Thanks, Rob.